I am about to show you the exact best times to check your blood pressure, because the order matters and most people do the right thing in the wrong sequence. You might be checking your numbers at a time that guarantees a false high reading, leaving you confused and frustrated every single morning. This hidden mistake creates sudden spikes that make you dizzy or tired, and your doctor might have been giving you incorrect advice based on these inaccurate numbers. I remember a man named Arthur, who was 71 years old, coming into the clinic feeling completely defeated by his daily readings. He was experiencing those sudden bouts of lightheadedness and a strange, heavy fatigue in the middle of the afternoon, which are classic signs that your blood pressure is fluctuating wildly behind the scenes. These symptoms can be quietly alarming, making you wonder if a serious event is just around the corner, especially when your home monitor flashes a high warning level. The truth is, your doctor might have been telling you the wrong information about when and how to sit down with your machine, leading to unnecessary worry and perhaps even the wrong dose of medication. Before we dive in, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and whether you've struggled with your blood pressure routine before. I want to hear your experience. 1. Start by delaying your morning measurement by at least 30 minutes after you wake up, making sure you completely empty your bladder before you even look at your blood pressure machine. This simple delay matters because it prevents you from capturing the natural, temporary spike in pressure that happens to every human being the moment they wake up and shift from a sleeping state to an awake state. When you sleep, your body lowers your blood pressure to rest your system, and when you wake up, it sends a surge of signals to increase that pressure so you can stand up without fainting. If you measure during this transition, you are recording a waking surge, not your true resting baseline, which can falsely convince you that your health is failing. Richard came to see me because he was absolutely terrified of his morning numbers, which were consistently flashing in the dangerous red zone on his digital monitor. Richard was 68 years old, a retired postal worker who always took his health seriously, but his morning routine was secretly sabotaging his peace of mind. His biggest mistake was keeping his blood pressure machine sitting directly on his nightstand, right next to his alarm clock. The very second his eyes opened and his feet hit the cold bedroom floor, he would immediately slide the cuff onto his arm and press the start button. He was capturing the highest stress moment of his entire morning routine, and his doctor was very close to increasing his daily medication based entirely on these rushed readings. We completely changed his approach by moving his blood pressure machine out of the bedroom and onto the kitchen table to force a delay. Richard learned to wake up, walk to the bathroom to empty his bladder, and then sit quietly in the kitchen for a full 30 minutes before taking his measurement. This simple change allowed his nervous system to settle down from the shock of waking up, and emptying his full bladder removed a massive source of physical stress from his body. Within just a few days of following this new sequence, his morning readings dropped by over 15 points, bringing him safely back into a healthy range without adding any new pills. The explanation for this improvement is entirely based on how your body manages fluid and physical stress in the early morning hours. When your bladder is full after a long night of sleep, it sends constant, urgent signals to your brain, which automatically raises your blood pressure to keep you alert. Combining a full bladder with the physical effort of suddenly sitting up creates an artificial elevation that does not represent your actual cardiovascular health. To do this correctly at home, you need to establish a strict rule that you never check your numbers within the first half hour of waking up. You must go to the bathroom first, walk around gently for a few minutes, and then prepare for your reading. Here is another simple habit. 2. You must implement a mandatory 5-minute silent rest period, sitting perfectly still with your feet flat on the floor before you press the start button on your blood pressure monitor. This matters immensely because the simple acts of talking, walking, or even holding your body in a tense position require active muscle engagement, which immediately forces your heart to pump harder. By forcing yourself to sit in complete silence for 5 minutes, you allow your blood vessels to relax and your heart rate to return to its true resting state. Without this silent period, you are measuring your active working pressure, which will always be significantly higher than your actual resting baseline. Margaret was a 72-year-old grandmother who could not understand why her readings were always so erratic, bouncing up and down wildly from one day to the next. She was diligent about checking her numbers every single morning, but she treated the process like a casual social event at her kitchen table. Her mistake was that she would slide the cuff onto her arm while actively chatting with her husband about their plans for the day, often crossing her legs under the table as she spoke. She thought the machine was broken because the numbers were so high, not realizing that the physical effort of speaking and crossing her legs was actively restricting her blood flow and driving up the pressure. I explained to her that the blood pressure machine is highly sensitive to any physical movement, including the small movements of your vocal cords and the tension in your crossed legs. We established a new rule where Margaret had to sit in a comfortable chair with both feet planted firmly on the floor, uncrossed, and she was not allowed to speak a single word for 5 full minutes before measuring. She also had to remain completely silent while the machine was actively inflating and deflating on her arm. This silent rest period completely stabilized her readings, eliminating the wild daily spikes and revealing a very healthy, consistent blood pressure pattern. The physical mechanics behind this are straightforward, as every word you speak requires your brain to send signals to your respiratory system and your vocal muscles. This constant communication slightly elevates your heart rate, and crossing your legs physically pinches the major blood vessels in your lower body, forcing your heart to work harder to push blood against that resistance. To do this correctly, find a sturdy chair with good back support, set a timer for exactly 5 minutes, and focus only on breathing normally without interacting with anyone or watching anything stressful. You can do this at home very easily, and it is completely free to implement into your daily routine. This is a perfect time to remind you to subscribe to the channel if you are finding these simple daily adjustments helpful for your health routine. Anyone can apply this silent rest rule safely, as it only requires you to sit quietly and relax your body completely. It is important to remember that true resting blood pressure means your body must actually be at rest, not actively engaged in conversation or physical posture strain. This supports steadier readings and ensures you are capturing an accurate picture of your cardiovascular health. Another helpful step is addressing your daily fluid intake. 3. You need to establish a steady, morning to noon water drinking routine to prevent the afternoon hydration dip that quietly causes blood pressure spikes. This matters because when your body becomes even mildly dehydrated, your blood becomes slightly thicker and your blood vessels physically constrict to maintain pressure, which forces your heart to pump with much greater force. Many older adults avoid drinking water because they do not want to take frequent trips to the bathroom, but this restriction directly causes their blood pressure to climb as the day progresses. Keeping your fluid intake steady ensures your blood vessels remain relaxed and your blood flows with minimal resistance. Thomas was a 64-year-old retired mechanic who always felt a strange, sluggish fatigue settling over him right around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Because he felt unwell, he started checking his blood pressure during this afternoon slump, only to find that his numbers were alarmingly high compared to his morning readings. His mistake was that he would drink 1 small cup of coffee at breakfast and then absolutely nothing else until dinner time, leaving his body completely deprived of fluids for over 8 hours. He was unknowingly forcing his cardiovascular system into a state of minor distress, causing his blood vessels to clamp down tightly to conserve whatever moisture was left in his system. We changed his routine by introducing a very simple hydration schedule that required him to drink 1 full glass of water mid-morning and another full glass with his lunch. He did not have to drink massive amounts of water that would keep him running to the bathroom. He just had to provide a slow, steady intake of fluid throughout the first half of his day. This simple morning to noon water routine completely smoothed out his afternoon numbers, bringing his 3 o'clock readings right back down to match his healthy morning baseline. He also noticed that the heavy, sluggish fatigue he used to feel in the afternoon completely disappeared once his blood vessels were properly hydrated. When you do not drink enough water, your brain senses the lower fluid volume and releases hormones that explicitly command your blood vessels to tighten up. This is a survival mechanism to keep blood moving to your vital organs, but it artificially raises your blood pressure on your home monitor. To do this correctly, simply fill a standard water bottle or a large glass in the morning and make sure you finish it slowly before you sit down for your midday meal. This is easy on the joints and requires no physical exertion, making it an incredibly simple strategy to maintain stable numbers all day long. If you have been told by your doctor to restrict your fluid intake due to heart failure or kidney issues, you must consult them before changing how much water you drink. For most healthy older adults, maintaining steady hydration is one of the most effective ways to keep your cardiovascular system running smoothly without unnecessary strain. This simple change supports steadier readings and prevents those confusing afternoon spikes that happen when your body is secretly fighting dehydration. One more easy change is adjusting how you physically sit at the table. 4. You must position your arm exactly at heart level and ensure you are using the correct cuff size for your specific arm circumference. This matters because gravity has a massive impact on blood flow, and if your arm is hanging down or resting too low in your lap, gravity forces blood to pool in your lower arm, which creates a falsely high reading. Recent studies demonstrated that simply having your arm unsupported or positioned incorrectly can artificially inflate your top number by up to 10 points, completely skewing your medical records. Using a cuff that is too small for your arm acts like a tourniquet, painfully squeezing your flesh and driving the pressure up instantly. Susan was a 71-year-old retired teacher who was incredibly frustrated because her blood pressure numbers were always high at home, but perfectly normal when she visited the clinic. She was very careful about her diet and took her medication exactly on time, but she was measuring her blood pressure while sitting in a deep, comfortable recliner in her living room. Her mistake was resting her arm casually in her lap while the machine ran, placing the cuff significantly lower than her heart and forcing the machine to measure the extra gravitational pressure. She was also using a standard-sized cuff that she had purchased years ago, even though she had gained a little weight and needed a larger size to fit comfortably around her upper arm. I helped Susan completely reorganize her measurement station by moving her monitor to a standard dining room table where she could sit upright in a firm chair. We measured the circumference of her upper arm using a simple soft tape measure and ordered a large-sized replacement cuff that fit her properly without pinching. She learned to rest her forearm flat on the table, using a small folded towel to prop her arm up just enough so that the middle of the cuff was perfectly aligned with the middle of her chest. These physical adjustments instantly corrected her home readings, matching the healthy numbers she always saw at the clinic and eliminating all of her confusion. Recent studies clearly show that the physical position of your arm is one of the most common reasons for inaccurate home blood pressure monitoring. If the cuff is below your heart, the reading will be too high, and if the cuff is held awkwardly above your heart, the reading will be too low. To do this correctly, sit at a table that allows your elbow to bend comfortably while your forearm rests flat on the surface, entirely supported by the table so your shoulder muscles can relax. You must measure your arm halfway between your shoulder and your elbow, and check the sizing guide on your blood pressure cuff to ensure you are not using equipment that is too tight. Please take a moment to subscribe to the channel if you want to keep learning these precise, easy ways to manage your health at home. Most older adults can try this safely, as it only involves checking your equipment and making sure you are sitting at the correct piece of furniture. Proper positioning and correct equipment sizing are absolutely non-negotiable if you want to know the truth about your cardiovascular health. This supports steadier readings and guarantees that the numbers you write down in your logbook are completely accurate and trustworthy. 5. You must arrange your morning routine so that you measure your blood pressure completely bare of any caffeine or food in your stomach, prioritizing the measurement before breakfast. This matters incredibly because digesting a meal and absorbing stimulants like caffeine forces your cardiovascular system into an active working state, which completely masks your true resting numbers and gives you a falsely elevated reading. Many older adults unknowingly sabotage their daily health logs by checking their numbers while actively drinking a warm beverage, completely unaware that they are capturing a chemically stimulated heart rate rather than their true resting cardiovascular baseline. By simply changing the order of your morning habits, you can entirely eliminate this artificial spike and get a clear, honest look at what your heart is doing before the day begins. Linda was a 65-year-old retired nurse who could not figure out why her morning readings were consistently flashing in the warning zone, despite taking her medication faithfully every single day. Her mistake was that she absolutely loved her comfortable morning routine, which involved waking up, brewing a strong pot of coffee, eating 2 slices of toasted bread, and then immediately sitting down at the kitchen table to check her blood pressure while finishing her cup. She thought she was being highly responsible by checking her numbers at the exact same time every morning, but she did not realize that the physical effort of digesting her toast and the chemical stimulation of her coffee were artificially spiking her pressure. I explained to her that caffeine acts as a direct, powerful stimulant to the central nervous system, causing the blood vessels to temporarily constrict and the heart to beat slightly faster, while digestion physically pulls massive amounts of blood into the stomach to process food. We completely reorganized her morning sequence so that she still got to enjoy her beloved coffee and toast, but only after she had successfully completed her quiet health check. Linda learned to wake up, use the restroom, sit quietly for her mandatory 5-minute rest period, take her blood pressure measurement, and then finally reward herself with her breakfast and her warm caffeine. This incredibly simple shift in her daily schedule caused her recorded numbers to drop significantly within just a few days, completely removing the artificial spikes that had been causing her so much unnecessary worry and confusion. The explanation for this is deeply rooted in how your body handles common stimulants, as caffeine can cause a sudden, dramatic increase in your blood pressure even if you do not have any prior history of serious cardiovascular issues. To do this correctly in your own home, you must treat your morning blood pressure check as the very first official task of your day, entirely separating it from your breakfast routine. You simply wake up, handle your bathroom needs to empty your bladder, sit in your designated quiet chair, take your measurement, write the numbers down in your logbook, and only then move into your kitchen to start your coffee maker. If you take specific morning medications that your doctor has explicitly instructed you to take with food immediately upon waking, you should always follow your doctor's orders regarding your prescriptions and ask them specifically how they want you to time your home readings. This supports steadier readings and ensures that the numbers you track are purely a reflection of your resting body, untouched by the temporary stimulating effects of your morning meal. Another helpful step is evaluating the exact time you choose to check your numbers in the latter half of the day. 6. You must stop relying on a single evening measurement taken right after watching the daily news or finishing a stressful day of activities, and instead shift your focus to the late afternoon or early evening before dinner. This matters immensely because your blood pressure naturally fluctuates throughout the day based entirely on your emotional and physical load, meaning a late-night check often captures your peak daily stress rather than your calm baseline health. When you watch stressful television programs or spend the evening worrying about family matters, your body releases stress hormones that tighten your blood vessels, guaranteeing that your evening reading will be uncomfortably high and difficult to manage. Robert was a 69-year-old grandfather who was trapped in a terrible cycle of nighttime anxiety because he only checked his blood pressure at 9 o'clock at night, right before he went to bed. His mistake was that he spent the hour before his measurement sitting in his recliner, intensely watching the evening news broadcasts, which always covered stressful, alarming events happening around the world. By the time he put the cuff on his arm, his heart was racing from the negative news stories, his stress hormones were elevated, and his monitor would loudly beep with a high reading that kept him awake, tossing and turning all night. He was convinced that his blood pressure medication was completely failing him in the evenings, not realizing that his own media consumption habits were driving his numbers up right before he tried to sleep. We shifted his routine by moving his second daily measurement to 5 o'clock in the afternoon, well before dinner and long before the stressful evening news programs even started airing on television. More importantly, we added a very gentle 15-minute walk around his neighborhood immediately after he finished eating his dinner, using this light movement as a natural release valve for the day's accumulated physical and emotional tension. This new sequence transformed his evenings as his pre-dinner readings were calm and accurate, and his post-dinner walk helped dilate his blood vessels, allowing his blood pressure to naturally lower itself exactly as it is supposed to do before bedtime. When you engage in light, steady movement like walking, your working muscles demand more oxygen, which forces your blood vessels to expand and naturally lowers the pressure inside those vessel walls. To do this correctly, simply move your evening measurement to a calm window of time in the late afternoon, ensuring you still follow the rules of resting quietly for 5 minutes before pressing the start button. After you eat your dinner, put on a comfortable pair of shoes and take a slow, gentle stroll for 10 to 15 minutes, focusing purely on deep breathing and enjoying the fresh air without any rushing or strenuous effort. If you have severe joint pain or balance issues that make walking outdoors unsafe, you can simply do gentle seated stretches or slow arm movements in your chair to encourage that same healthy blood circulation. Please remember to subscribe to the channel if you want to keep learning these incredibly simple, drug-free ways to support your heart health every single day. This supports steadier readings and helps your body naturally transition into a relaxed, restorative state for a good night of sleep. One more easy change is adjusting exactly how many times you press the button during your sitting session. 7. You must completely abandon the habit of taking only one single reading and instead take a series of 2 or 3 consecutive measurements spaced exactly 1 minute apart to find your true average. This matters deeply because the very first time the blood pressure cuff inflates and squeezes your arm, your body experiences a mild, unconscious startle response that almost always results in the highest, most inaccurate number of the entire session. By taking multiple readings and ignoring that very first startled number, you allow your nervous system to realize that there is no danger, resulting in a much lower, highly accurate reflection of your true cardiovascular state. David was a 74-year-old retired carpenter who suffered from severe anxiety every single time he looked at his home blood pressure monitor, treating the machine like a judge handing down a terrifying sentence. His mistake was that he would sit down, slap the cuff on his arm, take one single reading, and if the number was even slightly elevated, he would panic entirely and let that anxiety ruin his entire day. He did not understand that his simple anticipation of a bad number was actually causing his heart to beat faster and his blood vessels to constrict during that crucial first measurement. Because he never took a second or third reading to verify the initial result, he spent years writing down artificially high numbers in his logbook, leading his doctors to believe his condition was much worse than it actually was in reality. I taught David a completely new protocol where he was absolutely forbidden from recording the very first number that flashed on his digital screen, completely changing his emotional relationship with the machine. He learned to sit down, press the start button, let the machine squeeze his arm, and then completely ignore whatever numbers popped up on that first attempt, knowing it was just a practice run to let his body adjust to the sensation. He would then wait exactly 60 seconds, keeping his arm completely still, and press the button a second time and then a third time, finally writing down the average of those last 2 relaxed measurements. This simple multiple reading strategy completely cured his monitor anxiety because he quickly saw that his second and third readings were almost always 10 to 15 points lower than his panicked first attempt. The surface-level explanation for this phenomenon is commonly known as the white coat effect or the cuff inflation startle, where the simple physical pressure of the machine triggers a tiny burst of adrenaline in your system. To do this correctly, you must remain in your seated position without talking or moving between your measurements, keeping the cuff securely attached to your arm while you wait for the 1-minute interval to pass. You simply calculate the average by adding the top numbers of the second and third readings together and dividing by 2 and doing the exact same mathematical process for the bottom numbers. If your arm feels bruised or severely painful from the squeezing of the cuff, you should remove it immediately and consult your doctor, as your machine may be inflating much higher than necessary. This supports steadier readings and prevents you from making drastic health decisions based on a single, startled reaction from your nervous system. If you know someone over 50 who could benefit from this, share this video and subscribe for more simple blood pressure tips.